And I quickly want to cut across to the United States of America. Joining us on this special broadcast is Michael Kugelman, who's studied 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, and he's been studying India-Pakistan relations for a very long time. Michael Kugelman, your appreciation of the revelations that come from somebody like a David Coleman Headley in the Chicago Federal Court and Tahawur Hussain Rana to India's National Investigation Agency. Can India expect Pakistan to act, or will Pakistan continue to mislead and obfuscate but not take action against the perpetrators of 26/11?
Well, I mean, I think the question here is, could there be any factor at play that prompts Pakistan to change its long-standing position, which is, of course, to do relatively little in that regard. And in that sense, the recent comment by Bilawal Bhutto is quite notable in the sense that he is suggesting that Pakistan would actually want to turn over Hafiz Saeed. And I think that some may simply scoff at that and say, well, that's simply meant to appeal to an audience in the US and elsewhere, and there might not be something to it. But I think it's pretty significant that he actually made that disclosure publicly, and at some risk. I mean, he's already been, of course, prompted that response from Hafiz Saeed's son. The political opposition in Pakistan has also gone after him. When it comes to these issues related to terrorism of any type in Pakistan, Bilawal Bhutto, it's significant for him. We know what happened to his late mother. Um, but getting to your question as to could things actually change now, it's very hard to say, particularly given the state of India's relations with Pakistan in light of Operation Sindoor, and given just how high tensions are at this point, given the messaging coming from New Delhi suggests to me that it's very unlikely that now would be the time when Pakistan, and essentially its military, which is the one that calls the shots on these deals, would actually want to take a different approach. I simply think
And
that
in
these
your
types of
appreciation,
assets have never
is
been more
this
important.
is this an off-the-cuff remark by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari? Would he have the military's clearance on this, that, float this balloon, let's see if India comes to the talks table? And anyway, they have, for the past 3 decades plus, not taken action against Hafiz Saeed or Masood Azhar for either the parliament attack or 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks or a series of other terror attacks. It's just a trial balloon.
Right. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's we don't know what the circumstances of this Al Jazeera interview were. We don't know if he and his team had been told what the questions would be in advance and so on. So it's hard to say what the context was there. I mean, it is true that in the days since the ceasefire was announced, that Pakistani officials have been projecting this message that they would like to look toward the day when things could work better with India, somewhat of a different position from what you're hearing from the Indian side. And clearly, if Pakistan were actually to follow through on something like that, it would be, I think, a significant boost for the relationship. But I just think looking at the army chief and his perspective, including some of his most recent comments that he made about India, I just think, to me, it seems unlikely that you would actually have something like that happen at this point.
So, why is it, in your appreciation, that Pakistan does not take action first, let's say against Hafiz Saeed or Masood Azhar, and then seek dialogue with India? Why is it only a promise or a glimmer, and we've seen this over decades, and then expect India to come to the talks table? Despite, now that India has burnt our fingers so many times, this establishment in India is unlikely to fall into this trap again.
Well, I mean, of course, the position, Pakistan's official position, is that it's essentially done all it needs to do. But clearly, there's a lot more work that needs to still be done. And I think that it comes down to that fundamental strategic calculation on the part of Pakistan, that these figures like Hafiz Saeed, like Masood Azhar, that they could serve. They have value for Pakistan. They provide Pakistan with something to counter India. I mean, that has long been the policy, or one of the many reasons why Pakistan has been reluctant to completely dismantle this terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. Now, again, Pakistan's position is it doesn't necessarily know where Azhar is. It's a bit of a different approach than what we hear vis-a-vis Hafiz Saeed. Pakistan claims that Azhar is in Afghanistan now, that he's not even in Pakistan. But again, I just think that it's that tried and true policy on the part of Pakistan, that you have to hold on to those assets that you feel have been helpful over the course of time. And indeed, it clearly, in my view, is a very outdated policy. It was always a very dangerous policy. We talk about this notion of Pakistan playing with fire when it retains these links to violent actors and terrorists that, at the end of the day, you never know what they could do. They could go against you and become anti-state terrorists. And there has been a precedent for that in Pakistan. But again, I just don't necessarily see things changing anytime soon in this regard.
And isn't that also your appreciation, Sushant Sareen, the manner in which this bogey or this trial balloon has been floated by Bilawal Zardari? He's probably going to end up either like his mother or like his grandfather.
Look, in either case, I'm not going to shed any tears for him. So that's his funeral. He's welcome to it. Second, look, here is the thing. When they lie through their teeth and they say that they have no idea where Masood Azhar is. Masood Azhar attended the funeral prayers of his family members who were killed during Op Sindoor. For them to claim that they have no idea where the hell this guy is, come on, give me a break. Okay. Third, what Bilawal said, like I said, I don't take the guy seriously at all. He's worth nothing to nobody, right? He doesn't call the shots. Even when he was foreign minister, he didn't call the shots, right? He's just a guy with a nice clipped English accent to fool the Western audiences with. He speaks, that idiom. So he's a nice guy for that. But other than that, what he said in that particular interview, it was a bait at best. That will India bite? Because normally, people would have jumped at it in India, and the usual suspects would have made a big deal out of it. That there is a new talks offer coming, etc., etc. This time, everybody ignored it. So the bait failed, and if it wasn't a bait, it was virtue signaling at worst. Nothing more, nothing less. So I don't think we should take anything which Bilawal says seriously, or anything that any civilian in Pakistan says seriously. Anything even that a military guy says, we don't know whether that has any longevity in whatever they say. Bajwa was promising one thing, his successor completely changes the track. Before Bajwa, Kiani was saying something, his successor changes it. Musharraf said something, Kiani changed it. This is what the kind of beast we are dealing with. And I wouldn't even take a military guy when he makes an offer seriously, because I don't know that if tomorrow he's not in power, his successor will continue with that policy or will completely turn it on its head. And that's the track record.
Michael Kugelman, now that Operation Sindoor has happened, now that Indus Waters Treaty has been held in abeyance, now that there is there are these unknown gunmen who are floating around in Pakistan, Hafiz Saeed, a UN designated global terrorist, at one time was leading the Eid Namaz at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore, and suddenly he's supposed to be in hiding. Is this change likely, in your appreciation, force a shift in Pakistan's stance, or will terror continue and Pakistan will see, let's see what India does next time? Because each time, 2016 surgical strikes, shallow raids, 2019 Balakot, one strike, 2025, you've had 9 terrorist camps and 11 air bases and several radar stations targeted. Each time, India's response has been more severe.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that this approach that India is taking now, post Operation Sindoor, one that entails a series of punitive steps taken against Pakistan, non-military punitive steps, closing the border, suspending trade, the Indus Waters Treaty move. To me, it seems like an effort on the part of India to raise the cost to Pakistan of maintaining this policy toward terrorists. And indeed, I mean, the jury is out as to whether that would be effective or not. As you said, I mean, the pattern has been that what India has done to this point has not been sufficient, in that we continue to have these attacks, which, again, Pakistan's position is that Pakistan has no link to these attacks. But given the
But does
given the
America
history, it's
buy
impossible
this?
to discount
I want to
it.
understand from you, does America buy this? Because America has lost soldiers, not just 2,500 plus soldiers in Afghanistan, but American civilians during 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. Pakistan has been involved in terror in the United States of America. What do you make of America's policy with a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror?
I think that the U.S. side absolutely sympathizes with and supports India's position about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. I think in the case of the most recent attacks and the Pahalgam attack, there I think that the U.S. position is more okay. Well, we have to look at the past legacy and the track record of Pakistan, in the sense that there has not been any evidence put out there by India, at least publicly, linking Pakistan to the Pahalgam attack. But no, I think that broadly speaking, and there's multi-partisan support for this in the U.S., that there is a view that India is onto something, and that what it says about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism is something
Okay.
that deserves considerable, continued attention. But I would say this, that I think it's when you draw that link, when you make clear that this Pakistan-sponsored terrorism has not only threatened Americans but also killed Americans. In the case of the Mumbai attack that you mentioned, that I think really gets the attention of this administration, right? And I think that was important when the Indian delegation was in Washington, that at some point, some member of the delegation did make that link. Memories are short, unfortunately. I think it's important to make that message to an American audience.
Because globally, Pakistan should be isolated, Sushant Sareen. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening. Pakistan's been able to play both the United States and China. The question remains, how long, Sushant Sareen? Last 30 seconds on this part of the show.
No, look, I think it depends on how they make themselves useful for both China as well as the United States. We know how they are useful for China because this is a dog that keeps snapping at India's heel. So yes, the Chinese want that. For the Americans, it's mostly transactional, it's short term. Maybe Donald Trump thinks that there's some huge treasure of
Rare earth.
rare earths and other minerals which is waiting to be exploited. Every time the Pakistanis announce these kind of treasure troves, they turn out to be duds. I'm sure this one is going to be yet another one. But if Trump wants to, throw the dice on that one, he's most welcome to it. The second thing could be a geographical proximity to places like Iran, but we don't even know what the American policy is going to be on Iran. We don't know what the American policy is going to be on any country in the world. The American president is just threatening everybody left, right, and center. It reminds you of some of those old parables where, there is this king who says, okay, this guy says this, off with his head. This guy says something else, off with his head. This guy says something else, impose a tariff on him. So if that is the kind of capricious foreign policy that the United States is now infamous for, you don't know what they are going to find useful and what they are not going to find useful in the future.
प्रवीण तेवता जी, जो आखिरी 30 सेकंड मेरे पास हैं, अब एक ही बात पाकिस्तान समझता है, अमन की आशा नहीं, केवल ब्रह्मोस की भाषा। क्या ये आपका आकलन है?
इनके जितने भी आर्मी के इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं उनके ऊपर हमको बहुत ज़्यादा नज़र रखने की ज़रूरत है, और जहाँ जहाँ इनके ट्रेनिंग सेंटर्स हैं उनको हमको टारगेट करके रखना चाहिए, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान प्रॉक्सी वार में एक्सपर्ट हो चुका है और अमेरिका बहुत ज़्यादा इनको सपोर्ट करता है, चाइना बहुत ज़्यादा सपोर्ट कर रहा है, तो बफर स्टेट के रूप में है, उनका खुद का कोई अस्तित्व नहीं है। तो हमको बचने के लिए सारी चीज़ों को, अपना जो एग्रेशन रूप है वो हमको तैयार रखना चाहिए, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान कभी नहीं सुधरने वाला है और ना ही हमको इस तरह की सोचना चाहिए, ये सोच से परे जा चुका है।
Pakistan will never improve. That appears to be the conclusion of almost all